Good evening, welcome to School of Media and Public Affairs and to our first session with campaigns and elections. We're going to be talking about generative AI in campaigns in 2024, what's already happening and what we can expect in the future. My name is Peter Loge. I'm the director of SMPA. Welcome to what we like to call our living room. As a reminder to those of you on here, we're also live streaming this, so anything you say or do that's seen by the cameras will be seen by people who knows wherever, just as a caution. Here's what we're going to do tonight. I want to do a bit of a setup, talk about the School of Media and Public Affairs and the cool stuff we do here. I'll introduce our panelists for this evening, and we'll dive right in. So those of you students who are here obviously know this. The School of Media and Public Affairs at GW is a special little program. We've got about 400 undergraduates, about half of whom are majoring in journalism, about half of whom are majoring in political communication. All the coverage you're seeing of American politics today is being driven by and reported on by our graduates. We've got about 65 or 70 graduate students. They're graduates of that program, at least one of them this year, which is pretty cool. 25 full-time faculty, about as many part-time faculty, a half a dozen full and part-time staff. We've got some fellows. We've got an outside advisory council, countless alumni, friends and supporters around the world. It's a pretty cool place to be. We're pretty lucky to be here. So this evening's event is the first in a series of 3 events we're doing in cooperation with campaigns and elections. That came out of a conversation Shane and I had after a panel actually about ethics and AI in campaigns. We thought there's got to be a way to bring together students, practitioners, and academics to talk about both the theory and practice of politics. This is the first of the 3. Next month, we're going to be doing a similar event on press and the campaigns in 2024. How do the reporters cover it? It's a changing world. The candidates are different now than they have been in the past. And then in December, we're going to do one on what campaigns look like. I grew up doing field in a very different way than it's being done now, and that's not just because I'm old. It's because I feel like the world is changing. Also in SMPA, we're doing a bunch of events on a bunch of topics. You can go to our website, smpa.edu, or just Google us. We get added to our events list. Some pretty exciting things coming up. This fall, we've already had Senator Cory Booker. We've already had the former Attorney General of the United States, and a number of others. We're doing a lot of exciting stuff in the spring. So hopefully you can come back in the audience for that. All right. Here's what we're doing tonight. We are talking about what's happening with generative AI in campaigns in 2024. We're incredibly pleased, honored to be joined by 3 remarkable working professionals. I'm reading their bios as they were either sent to me or on their website. I have done no additional research, so do with it what you will. Catherine Algieri, yes. Hopefully didn't mispronounce that. Sorry.
You got it right.
Senior VP at Do Big Things, a digital communications firm working with progressive nonprofits and campaigns. Nationally recognized digital and political strategist who worked as senior digital advisor for Kamala Harris's groundbreaking presidential campaign and has raised more than $100 million for Democratic campaigns. First Latina to oversee digital for a major Democratic Party committee, leading digital to the DSCC in the 2016 and 2018 cycles, helping break fundraising records and setting campaigns up with strong digital teams. Worked in several Senate campaigns. Work has been profiled in the New York Times, Politico, and The Hill. She's a board member of Netroots Nation, frequent public speaker, including for American University Women's Politics We Lead program, Emerge America, and Netroots Nation. Welcome.
Now I can add GW.
Now I can add GW. We should have had you do that sooner. Next to her is a GW alum, not of SMPA, but not everybody can be so lucky, I suppose. Joe Pounder founded Bullpen Strategy Group in 2019 after starting several successful communications and research groups in the United States. Since founding BSG, he's helped lead firm's expansion to include work for clients across the United States, having a London team for international clients. If you need help on the international side, by the way, I'm just saying, I have summers off.
The Elliott School? No.
Can we deal with this mic, please? Most recently, Joe served senior advisor to Senator Marco Rubio's presidential campaign, working with a number of our alumni in that campaign. 2014, he was named by Campaigns and Elections as one of the top 50 influencers, and the Washingtonian called him the troublemaker for the firm's research success in the election cycle. 2012, served as research director, deputy communications director for the Republican National Committee, managing $3.5 million, 27-person operation, was named by GQ magazine as one of the 50 most powerful people in Washington. So I think we're just going to stop there. Like, there's a lot of other impressive stuff.
You could go on for a while. No,
no, I guess we're going to end with GQ because that's something to aspire to. Finally, last but certainly not least, Kristen Davison is at Axiom Strategies as a VP and general consultant. Joined them in 2019. She's worked with dozens of candidates in campaigns across the country, resulting in wins from school boards to U.S. Senate. Most recently, the American Association of Political Consultants awarded her the 2021 Most Valuable Player Award for work as a senior strategist on Glenn Youngkin's winning campaign for the Virginia governor's race. Congratulations on that. Today, she's the political advisor and strategist to the governor and a number of federal, statewide, local office holders and candidates. Before joining Axiom, she was the campaign manager on statewide campaigns and issue initiatives across the country, director of surrogates for the Rubio campaign. Seems to be a theme with SNFJ. And a senior advisor to Senator Roy Blunt's winning 2016 reelect, where she also spearheaded the 2016 Missouri Victory Program that resulted in a sweep of all statewide Republican candidates. Studied political science, sadly not here, but you know, we have a graduate program.
There's a consortium.
There's a consortium, that's
right.
all that counts. That's all that counts. The Foundation of Her Education came during her time as Chief of Staff to Karl Rove, former Deputy Chief of Staff to President Bush, and at Karl Rove and Company, she advised and worked with statewide, national, international campaigns, media outlets, led research, editing, and marketing to 2 national best-selling books. So a heck of a panel. That's none of which we're going to talk about. Tonight we're going to talk about the thing that everybody wants to talk about, which is AI. And before coming on tonight, I did a quick check on the Google, looked on just Google News hits for AI political campaigns for the past month, and it is many, many results, including 2 filed by Bloomberg today. So people have asked me, with the press or others asked me, is AI going to impact political campaigns? My answer is the toothpaste isn't just out of the tube. It's going to happy hour and taking selfies with the candidate. From your perspective, like, what is the role of AI in politics today? Like, how are you using it? What are your candidates doing? What do you see your colleagues across the industry doing? What do you think?
Well, I mean, there's certainly been a lot of press about all the negative and the scary elements of AI and all the ways that campaigns are going to have to prepare for that. And I'm sure we'll spend some time talking about that.
Yeah.
But on the positive side, there are a number of us who feel that it's actually an opportunity to increase like our output with limited resources. Just for example, I'm sure you can appreciate as a researcher when someone puts a photo out there on the internet, you're like, this is a potential gotcha moment. Like, let me go through this and find out what it is. You can use AI now to help match back and figure out, oh, yep, 2 seconds. That is a coal mining photo from, not Kentucky. So, and then, I've also seen folks use it to help them synthesize their thought processes in really sort of thought partner kind of ways. And then where I'm kind of interested in where it's going is our ability to reach wider audiences for sort of polling, creating profiles even, to see how these profiles of folks interact with different messages in addition to the use of AI and sort of polling, just so we can get more real-time feedback. So I think there's tremendous opportunity to help campaigns maximize their output, but it's all going to be as good as the people overseeing it, right? Because if you have folks who are like, oh, AI is wonderful and I don't need to fact check anything and hallucinating isn't really a thing, it's overhyped, then you're just playing right into somebody else's hands, another researcher's hands, to create a bad press story.
So this is what we were talking about before. I mean, you said it helps you when you're staring at a blank page. I mean, you guys are experimenting with it or using it? What are you guys doing?
So we are experimenting with it. You have to embrace it, I feel like, from a political and public affairs perspective. You have no choice. It is here. You have to learn how to utilize it in your day-to-day. And it's a matter of scale. It provides a lot of quick resources to any operation that's going on. And I think we have to remember every campaign that's out there is basically a startup. It has to start in January of the off year and quickly scale up into a very professional operation. It's probably the only industry where we ask, hey, start a $10 million small business in a matter of a couple weeks at the end of the day. And I think AI will actually speed up that process. I think AI will actually help campaigns be what they need to be, which are content production machines. At the end of the day, able to speak to more audiences than ever before. Remember, one of the biggest challenges for a campaign today is you have to speak to voters in more and more mediums. That means you need more and more hands to be able to reach voters where they are, and they are everywhere. And I think AI helps that. And speaking personally from the research side, one of the troubles that we've had over the last 10 to 15 years is there's just so much information to process, and this is true on the data side as well. There's just so much information that two hands can't do it. Two hands can't see every insight that's available at the end of the day. So all of a sudden, if you have an AI model in which you're putting a lot of content into and able to process that information into quick content, it really speeds up how fast you can scale, how much insights you can get on a campaign. And that's, I think, could ultimately, I think 2 years, 4 years from now, we're going to be asking, hey, did that campaign win because it had the better AI model at the end of the day?
So is that, I mean, is this 2 years or 4 years or at Axiom? Is this a today thing?
Well, I think it's, it definitely is, it's probably a 2020 thing, right? We started seeing it really being used, and it was only smaller, frankly, campaigns with fewer resources would grasp onto a shiny object to try to make them pop, right? Because they couldn't go on TV at the same rate or anything like that. But what we're seeing now, AI is here. It's going to continue to evolve. But in campaigns, does it enhance or replace? Because at the end of the day, campaigns are still, it's a business of people. It's a neighbor-to-neighbor business. You have to convert, hearts and minds, not just sell a car, not just sell an idea. You're really selling a person, a brand. And so to be able to enhance that by means of what medium you're communicating with, how to deliver the message, testing, those are all exactly how we can really lean into AI and use it. If it starts to replace that person-to-person connection, that's where I think we come up a little bit short, because I don't think that this is very unique. It's not entertainment, even though it seems like it most of the time. But it's not exactly, just to entertain. It's to also connect and win people over to build something. And so AI can help with that. I don't think it can replace it yet. But just to echo the points here, I mean, the data collection ability that AI has, especially now, you mentioned polling. I mean, people don't answer their landlines anymore. Few people have landlines anymore. And so you go to text and you go to IVR and now AI can be another resource to help, intelligently gather information for people who don't have TVs, who don't have landlines, because our generations are evolving where we stream on YouTube and we watch Hulu and we watch TikTok. So it's just a different way to reach people and gather information, where I think right now is we're going to see the biggest value, both in this cycle and then in the
Well, I want to hang out with you on this for a second. So everything I've heard from the three of you is really nuts and bolts. I mean, the three of you make a living doing this. It's not big and scary. This is one more tool, right? We've had the one more magical tool that's going to fix things. I remember in the '92 cycle, Jerry Brown had a 1-800 number when he was running for president. That was this big crazy thing. There was a meetup. But all the headlines are, prepare for your AI overlords, right? Campaigns and Elections wrote a story that was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it was like, if AI generated the ideal candidate, what would that look like? And we're going to have like max headroom, but are those alarmist headlines real? How worried should these nice young people who are studying politics and journalism be about the future of everything, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's a scary proposition. Right now, if you do what we do, it's more on the information side, right? You can manufacture your opponent and have him or her say something totally false, and it will get around and everyone will believe it before you can beat it back. And then it'll be so hard because it will always exist out there. So I don't think we can ever create the ideal candidate. We've all tried, and just like ChatGPT, you can break it in 2 seconds by asking the wrong question. So I don't think we're there yet. It's, where I think campaigns in the future have the risk is really on that replace factor. You are never going to be able to replace a candidate empathy and being able to relate and inspire with AI. You just never will, because it's a human action, it's a human emotion. But how can you use AI to get that candidate's human emotion out to the people? I think that it's a little bit, there are alarmists. I think if you're like me and you spend way too much time on Twitter and you get into the bowels of the internet, you see some real wild stuff on AI. I don't think we're there yet. I think that it will take one campaign or one candidate to really take it too far. And so far, I think as an industry and as a profession, we've been able to self-regulate that a little bit. Like, we can kind of call each other out when something goes too far. But it's already kind of happening. You see TV ads now where, Joe Biden looks 68 and not, 80, whatever, 80 years old. So, or you see, Donald Trump look vibrant, not sleepy. So I think it's already being used now in a cosmetic way. And I think we're a little bit further away from where it's the scary part where it's replacing. The part where we could be in risk there is where campaigns will rely on that versus volunteers and supporters and grassroots, because all that is still important. And you go to, you go to Iowa now, and if you're going to use an artificial, machine that's going to text people, and they're going to figure it out, and they're going to be offended. So that's the danger right now. I don't think we're, necessarily here for the, artificial candidate yet. But it will be a self-regulating thing that it's going to take one person to successfully do it. I don't think they will yet, because at the end of the day, you need to have the candidate message and brand and movement, and I just don't see how AI will be able to do that.
So Catherine, I mean, Do Big Things has carved out a niche in the progressive digital space as really being creative and way ahead of the curve in technology. I mean, Cheryl Conti, the founder of the firm, is about 3 steps ahead of anybody I know.
Yes. Absolutely.
Is Kristen right, or should we really be terrified?
I don't think, one of the things that I really loved that you touched on was empathy, right? Like, there is just absolutely no way to replace that in the candidates. And then also within the campaigns themselves, there is that ability to see sort of like, well, somebody said yes, but like, I'm picking up something from their face and I'm going to ask a follow-up question to touch on something else. I do think, though, if I can, like you mentioned earlier, like, should the students in the room be worried about what their respective futures look like? And I think what
you're
we're
going to see a bunch of people get up and leave in a moment.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, 'cause it's going to be
It's done.
transferring
No.
to the engineering program.
I think that what is going to happen, like we've
The LA
seen,
school.
like, when, the Mad Men world of receptionists, right? Now, like, we use our computers to do a lot of those things. We're going to see our industry evolve. Like, there are already like some tasks that firms would use different contractors and providers for that you can go to AI now, just to condense like the data. Like, if you're doing just like a very specific thing, I don't know, with like zip codes or something like that, right? Like, where there's very little like human judgment. But I don't think that it's going to replace like the innovation that is going to be needed. And in fact, one of the things that I've been talking about with other digital practitioners is the in the grind of the campaign, in the getting out of the emails, in the getting out of the press releases, there are always these other big priorities and like strategic things that people want to focus on, but they're not able to, because if they don't get that fundraising email out, they can't keep the doors open, right? But now they can like use like AI to generate a draft, like go through it, make that process happen a lot faster, and then make time to talk with their colleagues about those bigger strategic initiatives. So that's, in terms of the employment element, like, I think it's not all scary. But that said, I do support what SAG-AFTRA is doing.
Well, I think to echo that, I often view campaigns, especially when it comes to the communications, the research process, as a struggle on a spectrum between the mundane tasks that you have to do every day and the creative tasks. The data tasks, and then the actual reaching out to a voter, touching a voter, talking to a voter. And it's a real struggle. Where is that needle pointed every single day? The best campaigns are definitely more on the creative voter outreach strategy perspective. The worst campaigns are stuck over here. And I think with AI, it gets that needle faster over to the actual creative, over to the actual talking about the messaging every single day, not just talking about how many X voters do we have in this district, but now how are we actually going to reach out to them every single day? And the more that a campaign can focus on that side of the equation, the more that's going to be a winning campaign. I'm going to talk about something really geeky, which is the power of transcripts actually in a campaign. Like, you would not think that, getting a transcript of an event has been a struggle throughout my 20 years of doing politics. What did they actually say at the event, and how fast can I get that transcript? Because a reporter is already calling me about that event, a voter is already tweeting about it, and so forth. It used to be you had to put on your headphones and listen to the event, which would be an 8-hour process in the 2000s. But now, because of AI, we're doing it in real time, and we're getting really good transcripts, and it doesn't even matter the volume of the event and whatnot. And what does that do? It means that I've got a record as a campaign. It speeds up my rapid response time, because I'm not only doing it for myself, but I'm doing it for my opponent. And it also means that when a reporter calls and says, hey, what has your candidate said on X issue? I'm one control F away from finding all the record of him talking, or him or her talking on the record and so forth. So that's just like one minor example, and I think that's what we're starting to see this cycle is, let's replace the mundane so that we can focus on the creative.
Well, I want to hang out with this a bit because the focusing on the mundane, also some of what we've all done in campaigns can now be done faster, bigger, stronger. And I want to push, you said the limits, right? There are going to be some over here and some over here. We've all digitally retouched photos. We've all taken our opponent's photo, make the worst look possible. We've all sort of highlighted backgrounds, all within the limits of law and propriety, at least the four of us on the stage. I can't speak for anybody online, but AI lets us do it faster. And there are now rules, right? Google has specific rules about what we can do with ads. The state of Michigan is considering a legislative package around AI. Where is the limit between retouching, highlighting a background, and visually lying or using AI to just make stuff up? Where is that line?
Well, I think it's when you use AI to fundamentally change the fact. You know, because we still have to have essential facts, essential citations, and so forth, essential images and whatnot. I think that's probably when you come into the creative. Yeah, touching up. We've had that debate, I think, ever since we started doing politics. Hey, was that image touched up and whatnot? We've had the classic cases of, no, that's actually a Ukrainian wheat field, not an American one, and so forth. I think it's when you change. Hey, because we've had this debate too, like, is this candidate taken out of context when they say something? It's just a different form of that. You know, I tend to view it as misinformation when we talk about this subject is as old as time. It's just taking a different form now and can go faster. And that's why I think campaigns actually have to position themselves differently. You know, when I was in the Senate, we taught ourselves, hey, always have a hand recorder for when the senator is walking around, so when a reporter asks a question, we have a record. Mm-hmm. That's important too for campaigns. Do you have the video? Do you have the transcript as well? So campaigns have to be a little bit more defensive at the end of the day. I do believe like clear disclosure is really important, you know, as campaigns go forward and so forth. But I also think campaigns also have to maintain their credibility. At the end of the day. And the more you go in that direction, the more credibility you lose as a messenger, ultimately. And that's what we're still talking about. No matter how much technology you apply, we're still talking about a candidate getting elected, someone actually casting their vote for that person. And the more you go in the wrong direction using AI, the more you raise questions about that.
So,
Can
please,
I add
jump
on
in,
that?
please.
So I think that creates an interesting contrast, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always been the case of what the candidate can say, right? And then like maybe what the state parties can say, or maybe what their super PACs can say, and what the shadow groups can say. So I think that like what we're going to see is the candidates are going to, you know, be a lot more careful about that. And I think that's less where the area of concern is. And we've all sort of figured out ways to self-regulate. There's like no formal like statement out there that says like, when you're applying a red filter over someone to make them look evil, you know, like do X or Y, but there's some common sense, and there's also the check of like, did I just accidentally change somebody's racial identity? You know, like let's back up, right? I think the candidates are going to be good about this stuff. I think the risks are going to be a lot more as you get further removed from
So
them.
this sounds like, Kristen, you're talking about going down the rabbit holes of X or Twitter. Or
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting.
a friend of mine just bought a Tesla, and it comes out that it doesn't come preloaded with Twitter, which I found a little. I know that was my response too. That of all the, But so is that the problem though? It's not your boss,
That's right.
and it's not even the mainline IEs or outside groups. It's
fringe. I mean, for lack of a better word, influencers on the internet. I mean, I think, you know, Joe nailed it where you said it's on the if you fundamentally change the fact or what was said. So there have been, you know, credible groups who have taken something that you know, a candidate wrote and put a voice to it. It's not the exact voice, but it is what he said, to make it, you know, come alive for a radio ad or to go on TV. That's right there on the line, because you're like one step over from giving them a new voice. So that's still there. But when you go on, and I don't even know what different platforms there are now, but let's just take X, and it's a picture of a candidate on a horse or a candidate, saying things that are absurd. Hundreds of thousands of people will see that before they even see, another Politico tweet saying, look at this ad was fake. They're never going to see that. They're going to see what lives in their universe. That's where the real danger comes, because there is no regulating that. There is absolutely no regulation. We all kind of operate, I think, on some kind of, whatever you think about politics, we do have some code of ethics, whether it's unspoken or spoken, where you don't go too far to change that. But that world does not. It's people sitting at home making their own content. I mean, there are campaigns now that will pay people just to sit home and do that. And you see it now in the heat of the 24 primaries that happens every single day. And campaigns get sent mocked up photos and videos saying, did this candidate really say that? And it's on the team then to push back and say, no, that's totally false. So that's the biggest danger to me, because there's an entire world of people that don't operate in a professional confines, that don't care if it's true or not, and that the people who do, it will never fully reach everyone that sees that. What's the saying? A lie goes halfway around the world before it's heard,
Well, and to play off that's where I think AI will be kind of a double-edged sword to things. Like, the ability to manipulate information is faster. It gets around faster at the end of the day. That means I think where campaigns ultimately will develop over the next 10 years is they have to be a really fast content machine. You have to be able to produce 2 to 3 times more content than you're even doing today to be able almost to out-yell the misinformation at the end of the day. So that's where actually AI will help you. So the situation that AI might actually create is the one that might give you the tool to actually combat that misinformation, because it happens all the time. When I was doing Rubio's campaign in 2016, there were massive tweets flying around Iowa and so forth that would just get around, and you'd be like, how do I even correct this? At the end of the day, I do think AI, as you build it, will give you more tools to move faster ultimately.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because when I was on the Kamala campaign, I did a whole deep dive specifically on the misinformation that was catching fire in this space. And, to the point of double-edged sword, I think what we're going to see is that campaigns are going to have to spend more time specifically on their misinformation units, right? And
Which is a thing, by the way.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. When we were all coming up, that
Yeah.
didn't even make any sense as a sentence, but now, of course, I'm on the misinformation team.
Yeah. And, when people first started thinking about that stuff, they were like, oh, I'll just be really loud with the facts, right? And what people are finding is that that doesn't help you. What you actually need is a stronger counter narrative. And so the folks who are going to be proactively working on that. And I think where we're going to see folks sort of struggle this cycle is how they implement their AI misinformation response time, right? Because sometimes what happens on campaigns is something happens and they take it to somebody who doesn't really know who else to take it to. And then it can take a week or two before there's a process in place for that, right? So I think that the forward-thinking campaigns are this is going to be our chain of command for misinformation, and where that's going to be dealt with are going to have a leg up on the campaigns who aren't thinking about it.
Interesting. So I want to raise another part of the double-edged sword, though, and something that we've talked about on the phone ahead of time that others have raised, which is with the emergence of AI, the dark corners of the internet, there's clearly faked. Let's say your candidate does something really absurd. It's on video. It's out there. The response could be, no, that isn't me. That's fake.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because AI is so compelling. So you now get to, AI can not only generate lies, but it gives you an excuse about the truth. Is that, Joe, is that a threat?
I tell a lot of people the specter of AI is in and of itself a misinformation at the end of the day. When you put out a fact and someone says, no, that video must have been manipulated. It's no, we really just did it 10 minutes direct to camera at the end of the day. That's why I think just having a permanent record from the campaign will be the way to set the record straight. And yeah, you're not going to be able to get some people off of, hey, that must be AI. I've gone through in the past where, another campaign cited, well, that must have been the Russians hacking. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it's well, how do I prove that it's not the Russians hacking? At the end of the day, I think the ability of the campaign to remain a voice for truth and validity, I think is going to be the most important aspect. Is there a scientific formula to do that? No, there's not. But I do think what's central to that is your candidate's credibility and the credibility of the campaign.
And I'm going to add to that. to just the third-party validators are going to look different now. What we're seeing a lot of our campaigns and organizations work with influencers. Specifically, the research shows that people put a lot more faith in micro-influencers than like if Jennifer Aniston tells me like this is the best like hair product ever, I'm like, that's great. You have an endorsement deal, and I'm so happy that you're getting a cut of that, right? But if if there's somebody who's saying like, hey, like when I'm getting my kids ready for school, like I just put this thing in and I'm ready to go, that speaks to me. I follow her. I trust her, right? So if she comes to me and I'm following her and she's like, let me tell you the DL on this AI or generated video, that's somebody that I already think I have a little bit of like relationship with, like not in a delusional way, but basically like people, the research shows that they put a lot more trust in these micro influencers. And I think that's going to be key to
So this speaks to your initial point, right? The campaigns are about people and connecting with people. I would be remiss if I did not point out this is Aristotle's notion of ethos. For viewers at home, take a shot. But it is whether or not you're a person of credibility. So is your opening argument about the importance of people connecting with true empathy the response to your fear that lies will circle the earth before the truth gets out of bed?
I think it's a preempt and a response.
Okay.
Right. I think the campaigns that you and the candidates that you see succeed are the ones that understand that from the beginning, and the campaigns that establish a brand and a message that it's strong enough can kind of counter that too. Because if you have a brand and a message and we know what you're running on and we know what you're going to do, when someone else has an AI, lie, people are going to say, no, I've heard, about 2 months on TV from this guy and this is what he's saying. I do think that there is, the opportunity with AI is to get that message and that brand out to more people. And so when there are like Facebook bots and, text message, and it can all start with, hey, I'm Cindy, I'm a special assistant to the campaign, I want to get you to the right person. And then that can speed up the process, which normally would have taken, a 19-year-old, maybe like 15 calls to find someone to pick up, to like funnel that person right through to the person that's sitting in the Cedar Rapids field office that's going to then go to that person's house and say, here's your yard sign. No, you saw that video? No, that's fake, let me tell you. So it's just a faster way to get to the human connection, where before it would have taken maybe 1,000 calls to find 50 people that were willing to have that conversation. Now we can do that a lot faster, and but it's still at the end of the day ends with the human talking to a human.
To the larger overall question, will AI change campaigns? What amazes me right now is we're talking about what almost the Obama campaign was talking about in 2008, where it's a Facebook friend talking to a Facebook friend at the end of the day. But I think with AI now, we can do it bigger, we can do it faster, but it still has to be that trusted connection.
So this actually raises a bigger point. That one argument is generative AI and AI makes campaigns like they always were, only more so, right? It's still making the human connection, right? I mean, I was taught when I went to a different institution, also not called GW, the reason you do TV ads is because you can't knock on everybody's door. But ideally, you knock on everybody's door. The bigger the campaign, the more the tools. This is a way to knock on more doors, have micro-influencers knocking on their doors, but it raises the same fundamental questions. And I'm going to pull out Plato. I brought it with me. There will be a quiz. I assume Sarah briefed you on. No? Okay. Well, we'll deal with that later.
Hopefully, it's a group project.
You're all going to free ride on Joe. So one of the criticisms of people, frankly, like us, for 2,000 years, has been it's not about the truth, it's about sounding good, right? So Phaedrus, who's a famous sophist, tells Socrates, I've been told, my dear Socrates, what a budding orator needs to know, not what is really right, but what is likely to seem right in the eyes of the mass of people who are going to pass judgment, not what is really good or fine, but what will seem so, and that is, it is this rather than truth that produces conviction. So it sounds like what we're talking about with enhanced videos, does it sound right? Do I believe the woman with the hair product versus Jennifer Aniston? That's problematic because that person may or may not know the truth, is the same question that Plato was raising 2,000 years ago. Like, this isn't new, it's just faster. That sounds right?
Well, I mean,
I just want to get that Plato was right here.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, what I was saying before, we were talking about the influencers and different AI lies going on. I mean, just look back at like the South Carolina Republican primaries of the 2000s.
Right.
They just used flyers on cars,
yeah.
And that still happens now, right? It's still a disinformation campaign, but to your point, it's just faster. And frankly, you could probably be more targeted with it now. But on the converse, we be more targeted with the outreach too. We can now use data instead of blindly calling through every Republican or Democrat in a certain neighborhood or precinct. We can now use data to figure out which ones will probably pick up the phone because they actually care. Which ones have seen the distorted AI. And we can figure all that out in the front end. So it is going to make everything a lot faster. And I think you said something earlier that everyone that we do can relate to. You get so tied down in the tactics that you're not able to be strategic. And that will sink a campaign. If you are worried about how many doors you're knocking, and that's all important, it's all very important, how many yard signs are getting out, but if you're spending your day working yard sign logistics and email drafts, I mean, that campaign does not have the message and the brand to be successful. So it's going to help us be smarter and faster. To your point that Plato being right or wrong, we are always going to have people who are going to try to distort the truth to win. It's politics. Like, we've all seen the movies, we've all read the books. It's going to be able to compete with that, just like this will make us faster in what we do, it's going to make that faster too.
So is that right, Joe? I mean, this is what y'all are doing day to day is the same as we've always done, just a new tool to make it sort of more efficient and faster. Is that?
I think it does. It basically, what we do every day will just be faster. It will be bigger at the end of the day. I actually think campaigns will not become smaller. They'll become bigger. And I think also you got to remember they'll become a little bit more professional too. I mean, it's a big industry at the end of the day, but remember your AI model that you build on a campaign is still as good as the inputs that you put into it. So you have to have the top data firm. You have to have the top pollster at the end of the day to build the right AI, because then ultimately if you build the wrong, you might not even be hitting that voter at the end of the day from what it spits out. So I do think it will enhance campaigns. It will professionalize a little bit. It does speed everything up. And it will just change tactics. I remember like when I was the 2012 research director at the RNC, I had done the McCain campaign in 2008 against Obama, and we couldn't find a lot of video about him from his Illinois Senate days, state ledge, and so forth. And then all of a sudden in 2012, C-SPAN put their video library completely online. And we saw video that we had never seen before. I think that's what ultimately ChatGPT and AI does is all of a sudden we're going to be seeing insights that we never saw before. And that might actually enhance campaigns. It does, obviously there are dangers to it, but I do think it means that also campaigns will start earlier in the process. When does a candidate start building their AI model? The content of their life. Basically put into a system so someone could say, hey, I need to tweet it out about their college experience at the end of the day. So I just think it ramps everything up.
Is that right? What do you think?
I'm thinking a little bit about the way that AI is going to make it a little bit more complicated for us to reach folks who don't have firm political identities. And I don't know if I'm a little
this is
far
great.
off.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Because one of the things that we've seen in recent years is, I won't name any former presidents, but certain things that he has said or done, they've actually gone to supporters and asked if that was true or not, and they've not only said no, but the supporters have said that they trust this candidate more than they trust their religious institutions and more than they trust their own friends and family. And so when you then take AI on top of that and you can create videos that firmly fit into this narrative, it's going to reinforce some of these political identities in such a way that it's going to be a lot harder to I think it might further polarize us, if that's even possible at this point.
And I might take a little bit different view on
Sure.
that in the way of, I think the biggest issue that we've been dealing with in politics for the last 20 years is basically the democratization of information. There used to be a lot of gatekeepers to information. It used to be the David Broder column in the Washington Post. It used to be your evening and local news and whatnot. Now, over the last 30 years, we've been dealing with the fact that a voter during a debate can just Google the information and find it themselves. They'll find it anywhere possible at the end of the day, right? And it could be a Huffington Post, it could be a Breitbart, and that's the facts that they want to see or they want to get in the moment. I do think a ChatGPT starts to put a little bit of a filter on all that information. You can ask it a question, and you do, at least if it does with the Bing search, get some citations along with it at the end of the day. Like right now, Twitter or X or whatever is not a filter, it just amplifies the noise at the end of the day. So I do think there's a possibility at the end of the day for finding, but that is one of the things I think we're dealing with the most in politics that I don't think there are huge answers for. And AI is part of that equation for wrong or for right.
No, I'm wincing here, sorry, just because I'm thinking of what you're saying. Like, yes, it's going to filter stuff, but one thing that we haven't talked about is the inherent bias of AI, right? And like, it's only as good as the data source it's pulling from, right? So like, one of the things that we saw with the writers' strikes, for example, and one of the things that the writers were talking about, like, if they're only pulling from like scripts that have been written, and we've only in recent years started to think about how to be more inclusive in our language, we're going to be getting draft outputs that really don't reflect the way that society is as a whole right now. So between that and the hallucination, I just was like, yes, it's going to synthesize stuff, but I think it's going to synthesize stuff in some ways that that some of us are going to find painful.
Does somebody think? And then I want to go to questions.
I was on the part where you're talking about the polarization. The people, I do think that the people on both sides, the right and the left, there's some stuff there on the left too that wrong videos keep getting circulated. They're there in those camps. Fortunately, I think that those numbers are dwindling I mean, they're stronger. They're stronger than I think. They will hold on to that, but they're dwindling. But they are going to stay in their buckets. It's really about, for me, look at all the people who no longer identify with either party, and now being able to see that and to reach them with a text message that says, "Hi, I'm also an independent voter. Would you like to talk to Cindy that works back in the Cedar Rapids office?" To really identify them that way and try to recruit people more that way. I mean, we've done testing that shows, yes, broadcast is king. That's how we reach everyone. It's still the most effective. This test we just, a number of us did back in July, is the most effective. The second most effective medium of communication was text message. Now, we all get a lot. I'm sure you guys get a lot. You have friends. We have, solicitations for $5 to get me on the debate stage. But more normal people don't get that many text messages. And so when they do, they watch the video, they watch the ad on their phone. And if you can take ChatGPT to enhance that and make it more personal and have someone think they're talking to a real person to eliminate, 3 weeks of filtering out, I mean, it's going to speed up the process and allow you to connect, again, going back to a real person. But I think there's an opportunity there, and while we do have those polarized camps, those are the bells of the internet I talk about, they're always going to be there. And we just have to learn, to keep building up the sane center, I guess.
So I guess, the next week's conversation with Professor Shanto Iyengar is actually on affective polarization. Come back next week at 3:30.
Great.
There will be the quiz on Plato, so you're going to want to. I do want to go to the audience. We've got some super smart students here with preference. I can't see anything, Sarah, so just hand the mic to anybody. You've got also, all these people are going to be looking for work.
Okay.
On the left and the right. We staffed the
Do
Rubio
you
campaign.
divide them by?
No, we're very bipartisan at SNPA. But they probably did, yes. So who has a question for the panel? Please. Sarah, somebody hand this young woman a mic. Who are you on all of that stuff, and then what do you want to know?
Hey, my name is Jocelyn Dickey. I'm a junior political communications major here at SNPA. And my question was actually about, with the whole inherent bias and the fact that AI can only pull from information that's already out there on the internet. Do you think it's even actually a trustworthy enough platform to use? Or do you think there will have to be other institutions put in place to essentially fact check that the sources AI is pulling from are actually factual sources?
That's a fascinating question. I think.
I told you they're good students.
Yeah, absolutely. We were warned. So right now, my understanding is ChatGPT goes back to about 2021. Maybe that changed in the last couple hours. Bear with me. So keeping that time frame in mind too. I think though that when you are pulling stuff from ChatGPT, it's going to be critical to examine that. Anything that comes out of that you want to use in a statement. I'm sure I am not a research director. I've been well trained by research directors to not go out there.
You made Joe very happy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. To find out this is what I have as the output from this source. I need to now go sort of check that myself. Because as I mentioned earlier, it still does hallucinate. It still does like make up stuff, right? And it depends on what sources it's been pulling from too. So it's gonna ease up some work, but it's also gonna create some more work, and it's definitely not perfect.
What do you think, Kristen? I mean, you're the one talking about the lie circling the world. This is the question.
I think it's going to take one really bad lie to cost one really big election, and then we'll get into that. But I think, to your point, it's going to be self-regulating, and we're going to call each other out, and we'll call up the Washington Post fact checker and factcheck.org and everyone to counter it. But there will be a time eventually where there's an ad that is totally false, and it gets through all the screens, and turns out it's AI that will alter the course of an election. And I think once we see that, then we will see more calls for, regulation, whoever that would be from, to have more of a,
You're a research director, is this right?
So I think everyone's right on this on this question in the way of this is where AI and the human element in campaigns will certainly be matched for the next few cycles. Like if one of my researchers, because we encourage people to use it, like and brainstorm utilizing ChatGPT. If they came to me with just ChatGPT as the answer, I'd be like, well, hold on, you have to verify this yourself. You have to build on it yourself. There are a lot more resources available and data. We use a lot of databases that will never be in ChatGPT. We also use, what I think will be important, a lot of primary sources that will never be in ChatGPT. No matter how enhanced AI gets, there's only really one source of federal campaign donation information, and that is the FEC website at the end of the day. So you still have trusted sources of information that you have to use as a primary source. I do have a long-term concern. When I first started in politics 20 years ago, we were battling for paragraphs and stories at the end of the day. And then, door knocking and so forth. And then eventually it became, fighting over tweets and whatnot. And then to human nature, we started battling over Wikipedia and Wikipedia editing and entries. And then we started battling over Google search results. At the end of the day, who can have the top Google search result? My long-term concern, and we'll eventually see a campaign, a public affairs effort, a company, a government do this is, well, do I put out 1,000 websites answering just one question for ChatGPT? Who has the best public affairs shop in Washington, D.C.? Bullpen Strategy Group at the end of the day. But that's a real question, is at what point, we've seen it time and time again, do we get to that point, and what safeguards do we have in place by that time? Those are very open-ended questions.
Excellent. What else?
So you talked, sorry, I'm Addie. I'm a junior in political communications and graphic design. And so I guess one of my questions, you were talking about that you didn't think AI stifled creativity because it gave you a draft and you built off the draft. But in my personal belief, I feel like some of my best ideas come from trying to write that draft. And so if you take away the ability to write a draft and it's just something that AI produces and you build off of that, how do you gain back that creativity that you lose by doing the nitty-gritty, doing the mundane?
Yeah.
What do you think, Joe?
So that's a really great question. I would say the biggest challenge that we have, just I'm talking as a researcher here, is there's hundreds of databases that we need to check every single day. Even if you talk about what's in ChatGPT or not, the New York Times isn't right now. It's in LexisNexis still, which is something that I was using when I was in high school in 1998, at the end of the day. So we still have to go to all these databases to check. So, there's a core nugget there that you can use, but the real creativity is when you can connect a lot of dots together. And that's where ultimately building a unique model is what's going to happen. Like for my company, for any company, from all the content that we have to go through to speed up that process. And that's the exact same equation when it comes to data on a campaign. What do you do with all the data you get from door knocking? What do you do with all the data from polling results? How do you make that data talk to each other at the end of the day? And you do need a starting point there, because there's only so much that your two eyes and your two hands can do. I think that's the biggest challenge, is we need to get through all of the information so that we can get to the creative aspect. But you're right, it's not going to replace drafting a whole op-ed at the end of the day or a whole press release. It still has that metallic computer voice to it, and you still need the messenger to be the candidate.
What do you think, Betsy?
So as someone who's done just enough graphic design to drive graphic designers crazy, I too have found that some of the best ideas have come out of starting with something and realizing that it's failed and other ideas come up. I think the real talk here is that it's going to come down to staff and managers to have these conversations and to advocate for, like, yes, I know that, like, I could just use AI to spit out 3 drafts for this, right? And that's fine for like an end of month, fundraising 5-sentence email, right? But we're going to be doing this special appeal on X or Y. I'm going to need some more time in my schedule to actually create a gem to drive and fuel a whole campaign. So that's like where we're going to see some folks, years ago, Walmart said, "Oh, we overdid it on like trying to like not give our staff enough like money or resources, right? Like we're going to come back a little bit on like what we're going to pay folks." I think we're going to see some employers try to go too hard on using everything in AI, and we're going to come back to a mix for those. But again, you as a person with your ideas and having those talks with your managers is going to be really helpful.
Kristen, this sounds like what you're talking about, right? It's going to take one campaign to go too far. And it also sounds like the human connection, right? Mm-hmm. Because one can generate an infinite amount of these ridiculous texts. All 4 of our phones are now buzzing we're $7 away from the collapse of whatever you care about. Does that then create more space for less tactical and more strategic thinking for the young graphic designers?
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's so many things in a campaign, especially if you have to run all of it and you have different managers and you have to, in one day, approve a script that someone's saying at a door, a TV script, a text message script, a piece of mail, and like maybe an email that's going out. And like two out of those things, like boilerplate. Everyone just keeps it going. But you're going to spend the most time on them because if there's a typo, if there's a thing that's wrong, then those are the ones that everyone's going to blow up. So to have something like that that can take that out of your brain so that you can narrow in on the TV script, so that you don't have, like I personally would not outsource a TV script to AI. I think that there's still an art to some of this, and that's part of, I'm also a really big believer in data, but there's 10% that's gut. That's just how, this business works. So there is an art to a lot of this too, and the AI can help take some of the mundane, tactical things out so that the creativity can be more, and you do have more time, and you're going to Joe's point, you're going to see a piece of data and something else, and that's going to trigger something else for you to think and be more creative about. To rely on AI to create it, I think, is where we see that probably won't do as well as someone who just has time to think more about what they're really good at doing.
So I think we'll do one more question and then closing thoughts from the panel, if that works. One more question? Or 2 more questions? I see, or 3. Sarah, this is your call. Tell me when we're done.
Hi, I'm Lily Smith. I'm a freshman and I'm a journalism major. I was just curious what your guys' thoughts on AI's impact on local versus like national campaigns, and if, a local campaign might have a bigger reaction to AI because it's more of like a nuclear and like biased community.
Yeah, I actually think that I fear AI the more local you go, because it's different and they know their neighbors. They know who their people are, and so that's different. I will say the national campaign right now, if you're watching 2024, it is local. So when you go into Iowa and you're going outside Des Moines and you're doing all 99 counties, to have AI, the response there again needs to have that human connection. What's happening versus while that's happening, there's AI helping text messages and more localized connections and precinct parties and pizza parties. The same day on the national level, there's going to be an AI meme. Am I saying that right? I don't know. I'm dating myself. GIF. I don't know how they do, but there's going to be one that's made up.
They'll fill you in later.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be one that goes around the world, and Politico's going to have it in their evening newsletter, and it's going to be on, what are the comedy daily shows, and like maybe on, MSNBC is going to go crazy about it. But no one in rural Iowa is going to know what that is. They're not going to care. So there's 2 different worlds here that when you're looking at these on the local level, it can work. It needs to adapt to, a national campaign is local in that sense. And AI needs to adapt to the race that you're in. You're basically running mayor races in all of these different regions. And then on the national front, you can't let the national drive the local, because normal people don't care about a lot of this stuff. So it's just knowing which race you're running, who your voters are, and how to connect with them without making them think that they weren't important enough to have a real person call them.
What do you think, Catherine?
I mean, I think, Kristen, those are all excellent points. I think that it also, though, presents more opportunities for campaigns at the local level. Just because, the staffing sizes that, we're used to doing on Senate or presidential or statewide races is very different than, somebody who's running to be like attorney general or is a first-time candidate. And there are going to be a lot of resources that they can use because they can't afford to hire, say, a whole digital firm, or there's no way anyone's giving them any money for polling. It's going to help some folks who are scrappy to be able, maybe even to get a foot in the door, even though that they aren't super well funded.
What do you think, Joe?
I'm going to take a little bit of a twist on this. I think what's going to be fascinating with the use of AI is actually in maybe the local and state newsrooms, talking about media. At the end of the day, what's been fascinating over the last 10 years is how many local stories do we see every day because of Twitter all of a sudden grow into huge national stories. Yeah. And then all of a sudden a newsroom like the Texas Tribune or whatnot employing AI all of a sudden might have the ability to cover that entire state and what's happening at the local level from a city council, county commission standpoint. I think it is only going to make almost everything we do almost national from that perspective. Think about a researcher, all of a sudden what someone was doing on the city council is no longer relegated to the state library and microfilm. It's out there on video, and you can see it at the end of the day. I'm on the board of an AI company that's taking thousands of hours of local government video and putting them into a database and putting an AI interface on it so that anyone can search for any term they see. At the end of the day, we just don't do that. No one has eyes on that. All of a sudden, everyone, no matter where they're sitting, can see what this city council in Nevada is doing versus this city council in Alabama or whatnot. So ultimately, I think you're going to see a lot more exposure, a lot more transparency around things, the ability to cover local issues and local issues going more national, and then ultimately bringing it back to the campaigns. How many times was Mitt Romney asked to respond to what a Senate candidate said in a state in 2012? Well, what happens when he's asked to respond to what the mayor of some town he's never been to says? So I'm really fascinated from a media, government data transparency part on the local level.
One more. We have time for one more, I'm told.
Hi, I'm Lorenzo Lamarzi. I'm a freshman journalism major. You were all talking a lot about how AI is going to replace all of the mundane kind of like day-to-day work that gets done in these kinds of firms. So I'm wondering, how do you think that's going to affect people like us, people who in the next 2 to 5 years want to go into these firms and start working, but all of the mundane sort of entry-level work is being taken care of by AI?
It's a young man who wants a job in her career.
That's a great question.
To clarify, not all that work is going to be done by AI. It's more like it can help with the drafts and stuff. There's always going to be a human element. And I think it's going to be something that's going to be incorporated in trainings. And I think that just as we're talking about how the campaigns are going to grow, for example, there's this new emphasis now on misinformation, we're also going to see the firms develop different units. We have a whole platform called Spark Echo now that is just specifically about working with influencers, right? And that didn't exist, as a real business model a few years ago. So we have people who are, involved in that element of it, right? So I think that there is going to be work. It's going to evolve and be different, but it's sort of there'll be an element of supervising AI on some of the mundane stuff, but.
And then I think the dirty secret is, and I think we could all probably agree, there's so much on a campaign that you want to do that just doesn't get done. Mm-hmm. So I honestly don't think that it's going to cost jobs. I think it's going to help people do more. So I can't tell you how many campaigns have boxes of sign-up sheets that never get entered into something because they worked 20-hour days, but like that there were just other things that came in line first, that you get an endorsement from a sheriff, and it would be great to have him write a letter to the editor in every major newspaper across the state. You just don't have the time to do it. So I think it's just going to help, because like I think Joe said earlier, these are startups, and even the largest campaign starts very small. So for someone that is looking to get into this, get in there on the ground floor so that you can be the AI, information inputter, because it's going to help you do better versus, sitting there with the headphones and spending 8 hours transcribing an event. You're going to be able to transcribe 5 events in the matter of a half hour. So it's just going to help you do more, better, because few will admit it, but there is so much that gets left on the to-do list on a campaign because you just run out of time. These are startup businesses that you run down to zero. You literally are running to go bankrupt at the end of it. So I don't think it's going to cost jobs. I think it's going to help people do their jobs better.
So Joe, will these people have jobs?
I mean, I have to completely echo that. Like, I think it's going to be more people doing better work at the end of the day. That means firms growing faster. I actually think firms will just get bigger and bigger at the end of the day. There's always another campaign. There's always another client, and AI will allow you to scale faster, bring on more people, and just work more campaigns and clients. And it creates, to your point, like, it will change too. Like at our firm, because we do a lot of research and media monitoring, we produce a lot of unique content just to ourselves. So we're making a big investment in building our own AI models so we can query our own research, at the end of the day. So when a reporter or a new client comes our way and says, what do you have on X? We can actually ask ourselves that question much more efficiently at the end of the day. And having more people on our team means that we're producing more unique content and more analysis to just keep feeding that at the end of the day. So I think, are there certainly industries where it could probably replace jobs? Sure. But I think when it comes to public affairs and the political industry, I think it only means scaling faster and bigger at the end of the day.
So I promised last words, but that's a great thing to end on, and we're at time. So that objection, I'll leave our students secure in the knowledge that their investment in SMPA is a good one. Thank all of you for being with the audience. Thanks all of you for turning in online. Thank you, the three of you. Hugely thanks for Campaigns and Elections, Shane, for your team for co-sponsoring this, for our team, Sarah and her team, and our students manning the cameras. This is terrific. I look forward to continuing these conversations. And I look forward to reconvening next month to talk about press campaign relations in the 24 cycle. Thank you again. Thanks.
Thank you.